No one expected the Cleveland Browns to become the center of one of the most chaotic and controversial football storylines of the season. But the moment Dillon Gabriel was pulled mid-drive and Shedeur Sanders walked onto the field without a single first-team rep, everything shifted. This wasn't just a strange coaching decision. It wasn't a routine quarterback rotation, and it definitely wasn't about evaluating talent on the fly. According to multiple insiders, this moment marked the beginning of something far more unsettling, a potential power battle inside the Browns organization, one that may have just exploded for the entire world to see. Because from the outside, it looked like a normal substitution, unexpected, confusing, but still technically football. But from inside the walls of the facility, players, staff, analysts, and even people tied to the front office saw something wildly different. They saw a move that many believe wasn't about strategy, performance, or game flow. They saw an action that looked intentional, designed almost surgical. A move that some sources claim was meant to embarrass a young quarterback before he ever had a real chance. And that's where the story takes its first sharp turn. For weeks, whispers floated around the building, rumors that not everybody in the coaching staff supported the organization's decision to draft Shedeur Sanders, rumors of internal division, of coaches sticking to their guy and executives pushing for the future. At first, it felt like normal football politics. Every team deals with them. Every locker room has tension. Every staff has disagreements. But then Sunday happened. A decision made in the middle of a functioning offensive drive. No injury, no misread, no meltdown, just a sudden, silent signal, and everything fell apart. Players on the sideline looked stunned. Assistants reportedly questioned the decision immediately. Gabriel himself appeared confused, even asking coaches what happened. The response, according to sources, vague, indirect, something along the lines of "we're just trying something." Meanwhile, Sanders, who had reportedly received zero meaningful first-team preparation all week, was told, "You're in." If you're enjoying this video and loving the content, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up. It really helps us know what you want to see more of. And why keep all the excitement to yourself? Share this video with your friends, family, or anyone who loves NFL drama. No warning. No adjustments. No prep. And that's when the conversation changed from confusion to suspicion. Some players started connecting dots. Some coaches exchanged looks, and people inside the organization began asking themselves a chilling question. Was this a test? Or was this a setup? Because the way this unfolded didn't feel random. It didn't feel spontaneous. It felt orchestrated, like a move made with intention. And once word started spreading, the reactions were immediate and intense. Some called it disrespectful. Some called it political. But others called it something far worse. Sabotage. And if those claims hold even a fraction of truth, then what happened on Sunday wasn't just a quarterback change. It was the moment the Browns' internal war spilled into the spotlight for the entire world to witness. Long before cameras caught the chaos on Sunday, something felt off inside the Browns facility. It didn't start with the substitution. It didn't start with the sideline tension. According to people close to the situation, this story began with whispers, quiet at first, almost easy to dismiss. But like most controversies in the NFL, small rumors have a way of growing fast when enough people start repeating the same thing. And that's exactly what happened. The earliest conversations reportedly started behind closed doors in film review sessions and internal meetings. Staff members noticed a strange shift in the tone surrounding Shedeur Sanders. One source described it as professional distance with a personal undertone. Another said it felt like certain members of the coaching staff had already made up their minds before training camp even ended. None of this was public, of course. Outwardly, everything appeared normal. Standard press conferences, standard messaging, standard competition narrative. But inside the building, people began to notice something else. There were subtle signs, patterns that didn't make sense for a team that used a valuable draft pick on a quarterback expected to be part of their future. Sanders wasn't being rotated into meaningful offensive reps. He wasn't taking chemistry-building routes with starters. He wasn't being plugged into situational drills designed to simulate actual game conditions. Instead, he was consistently placed in developmental lanes, working scout team concepts, running generic installs, and sitting through meetings that barely acknowledged him as a legitimate option. At first, most brushed it off. Teams manage young quarterbacks differently. Development plans vary. But as weeks passed, the same question kept resurfacing. Why draft him just to ignore him? That question grew louder when a different rumor surfaced, one suggesting that the coaching staff didn't want Sanders in the first place. According to insiders, some members of the front office pushed aggressively for his selection, believing his talent ceiling was too high to pass on. Meanwhile, certain coaches reportedly preferred sticking with the existing quarterback room and maintaining their established system rather than adapting to a new style. Nothing was confirmed, but enough small pieces started fitting together that people began paying attention. Players noticed the imbalance in reps. Analysts noticed the lack of integration. And eventually, even some staff members began quietly acknowledging the obvious. There was tension, and it wasn't going away. But the rumor that changed everything was the one suggesting this wasn't just a disagreement, it was a power struggle. A battle between long-term vision and short-term control. A divide between those building the organization's future and those protecting their own authority. One source summed it up in a single sentence. People weren't arguing about who should start. They were arguing about who gets to decide. And once that rumor spread, Sunday's events didn't feel random anymore. They felt inevitable. Something shifted the moment practice resumed. The energy was different, not loud, not explosive, just tense. Coaches weren't talking as much. Players weren't laughing as much. And for the first time since joining the team, Shedeur Sanders walked onto the field without the swagger everybody was used to seeing. The cameras caught small moments, subtle but impossible to ignore. A delayed stretch routine. A quiet sideline conversation. A stare-down with a coach lasting a little too long. Nobody knew what it meant, but one thing was clear. Something was brewing. In the NFL, practice is where chemistry builds or collapses. And this week, it felt like every drill was a silent test. Quarterback reps suddenly rotated. Play calling, different than usual. Coaches, way more hands-on and not in a supportive way. At one point, a clip leaked online showing Kevin Stefanski walking past Sanders without acknowledging him. Not a nod, not a word. Sanders looked confused, then annoyed. Commentators and fans paused the footage 100 times, trying to analyze body language like forensic detectives. Was it tension? Was it strategy? Or was it the beginning of a power struggle? Inside the building, whispers grew louder. Some players reportedly felt like the coaching staff was trying to humble Sanders. Others believed Shedeur was pushing back, asking for more control, more say, more respect. Some insiders even claimed Stefanski was testing his leadership. Sink or swim, show us you can handle adversity. But here's the thing, Shedeur Sanders isn't the type to back down. During scrimmage, he ran plays with intensity. He adjusted protections. He corrected receivers. And every time he completed a pass, he stared directly at the sideline, not celebrating, not talking, just making a point. At one moment in practice, things escalated. Sanders called an audible, something he'd done before without issue. But this time, Stefanski stopped the drill. Voices were raised. Hand gestures got aggressive. Players turned their heads. The clip wasn't released publicly, but insiders say it was heated, the kind of exchange that only happens when someone feels challenged. After that moment, practice changed again. Suddenly there were closed-door meetings, shortened press access, no locker room interviews. Every question about Sanders or Stefanski was answered with the same line. We're focused on football. Which, in NFL language, usually means something going on and we're not talking about it. By the end of the week, players started taking sides, not openly, but through tone, body language, and who they worked with during drills. Some stood behind Sanders and his confidence. Others aligned with Stefanski and the coaching structure. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. This wasn't just a practice week. It was the beginning of a divide. And the craziest part, nobody knew who would break first. The coach or the quarterback. There are moments in sports where everything feels scripted, controlled, planned, anticipated. And then there are moments where the script gets thrown out the window and chaos takes over. For Shedeur Sanders, that moment came fast, unexpected, and without warning. Game day, stadium packed, cameras rolling, commentators doing their usual breakdown. The starting quarterback jogged onto the field like nothing was wrong, like this week hadn't been surrounded by rumors, tension, and sideline whispers. But something was off. The offensive rhythm was shaky. The huddle didn't look sharp. Missed reads, blown protection, confusion. The offense looked like they were reading two different versions of the playbook. Fans noticed. Analysts noticed. The sideline noticed. And then it happened. Midway through the second quarter, after a drive that ended with a botched communication and a timeout that never should have been needed, Kevin Stefanski made a move nobody saw coming. He pointed to Shedeur. No prep. No warming up. No headset consultation. Just a cold, blunt command, "You're in." The stadium reacted instantly. Gasps, cheers, shock, confusion. Even the broadcast booth scrambled. Wait, is this planned? Is the starter hurt? Is this a benching? But there was no injury update, no explanation, no announcement. Just Shedeur grabbing his helmet, jogging toward the field, and stepping into the fire with zero runway. Players rushed to him in the huddle, some supportive, some surprised, some silent. The defense on the other side smelled blood. A rookie QB, cold off the bench, dropped straight into a live game without rhythm or warning. Most quarterbacks would crack under that kind of pressure. The timing, the speed, the expectations. The NFL isn't college football, and opportunities like this can either launch a career or destroy it. But Sanders, he didn't blink. First snap, fast release. A safe completion. Nothing flashy, but enough to say, "I'm not rattled."
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button.
Second play, a read adjustment. He pointed, redirected, took control like he'd been running the offense all season. Third play, deep shot, not reckless, calculated, confident. The throw didn't connect, but it sent a message. He wasn't here to survive. He was here to compete. On the sideline, cameras caught Stefanski watching him closely, not with excitement, not with frustration, but with a look that said, "Prove it." And that's exactly what Sanders tried to do. The drive wasn't perfect. There were missed throws, pressure collapses, and moments where the speed of the game hit like a freight train. But there was also poise, control, fire. By the end of the quarter, the stadium wasn't watching the game. They were watching Shedeur. Cold or not, ready or not, unwanted timing or not. He was now the story. And everyone, teammates, coaches, fans, rivals, knew one truth. There was no going back. Once Shedeur Sanders stepped into the game, everything shifted. Not just the offense, not just the momentum, but the energy inside the stadium. You could feel the tension, like static before a lightning strike. Nobody knew how this was supposed to go, not the players, not the coaches, and definitely not the fans. One thing was clear. Something unpredictable was about to unfold. Shedeur lined up under center, but the rhythm was still off. The offensive line looked confused, unsure if they were running the scripted play or adjusting to Shedeur's live read changes. One lineman flinched early. False start. Stadium groans. Broadcast reactions. Cameras immediately zoomed in on Stefanski and Sanders. Stefanski had his arms crossed. Sanders looked calm, maybe too calm for a situation that volatile. Next snap, chaos. The defense sent pressure, and not just standard pressure, a disguised blitz designed to attack a young quarterback's instincts. A linebacker bylaid. A corner crashed. The pocket collapsed instantly. Sanders had seconds, maybe less. And somehow, he made a play. He rolled right, escaped 2 defenders, and fired a sidearm rope to his receiver. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't textbook, but it was electric. The crowd erupted. Teammates ran to dap him up, but the coaching staff, silent, expressionless, almost irritated he made something out of nothing. That's when things started escalating. Shedeur began audibling, shifting formations, changing plays, adjusting protections. It looked like command leadership. But on the sideline, Stefanski wasn't celebrating. He grabbed the headset and barked something, not calm instruction, but heated direction. Cameras caught it. Social media went wild. Is Shedeur ignoring the play calls? Is Stefanski losing control? What is happening on that sideline? The next play only fueled the fire. Sanders took the snap and launched a deep ball, a risk. A challenge, a statement. The receiver caught it in stride, first down. Stadium shaking. Teammates hyped. But Stefanski? He turned away, jaw clenched, packing like a man watching his authority slip. Then came the breaking moment. A miscommunication, or depending who you ask, a disagreement, caused Sanders to run a hurry-up play instead of huddling. The offensive coordinator began shouting at him from the sideline. Sanders gestured back, pointing at the defense like, "They're off balance, let me finish this." The ball snapped. Pressure, collapse, contact. Sanders got hit hard, the kind of hit that silences an entire stadium. Helmets clashed, bodies piled. For a second, nobody moved. Then he stood up. Not shaken, not afraid. Instead, he stared at the sideline, straight at Stefanski. Not disrespectful, not emotional. Just a message. I'm still here. Chaos wasn't just on the field. It had spread to the culture, the coaching, the future of the franchise. And everyone watching understood one thing. This was no longer about one game. This was about power. After the game, the chaos didn't stay on the field. It followed everyone straight into the locker room. The atmosphere wasn't tired or defeated or routine. It was tense, thick with silence, confusion, and unspoken questions. Guys weren't just replaying the game in their heads. They were replaying moments, looks, tone, decisions, and most importantly, who they blamed. Some players sat quietly, helmets still on, processing. Others were packing, whispering, exchanging looks like something major had just shifted and maybe couldn't be undone. And that's when the divide started showing. A group of players, mostly younger guys, went straight to Shedeur. Some slapped his shoulder. Some just nodded. A few even told him what millions of fans would later say online. "You should have been starting." Then there were the veterans, the ones who'd played under Stefanski for years. The ones with history, loyalty, and structure drilled into them. They didn't say much. They didn't need to. Their silence said everything. There's a system here, and he didn't follow it. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't yelling. It was worse. 2 different belief systems forming, quietly. Some saw a spark. Some saw a threat. And rumors say Stefanski noticed it too. Reports later suggested he pulled aside a few team leaders, the ones he trusted, and made it clear. Things would stay his way, not Shedeur's. Whether he meant that as guidance or a warning depends on who you ask. Meanwhile, Sanders kept a calm energy, almost detached from the chaos around him. He wasn't celebrating his moments. He wasn't defending himself. He wasn't arguing. He was studying film on his tablet like it was just another game, not a controversial turning point in the locker room dynamic. But that made things even stranger. The rookies admired him. The veterans didn't understand him. And the staff, they couldn't control how quickly the narrative was shifting. Later that night, when everyone thought things would cool down, they did the exact opposite because the outside world started talking. Tweets, reactions, headlines. Some calling Sanders the future. Some calling the situation a disaster. Some blaming the coaching staff for not preparing him. Others blaming Shedeur for going rogue. And once players started seeing those posts, the locker room silence turned into sides. Suddenly, guys who normally wouldn't speak up were debating. Not loudly, but enough to show this wasn't just a football conversation anymore. It was about respect, direction, leadership, identity. At one point, someone reportedly said, "If he's the future, why aren't we building around him?" No one answered. Because deep down, even the coaching staff couldn't ignore the truth. The team wasn't just reacting to a game. They were reacting to a shift, one that felt inevitable. And whether people liked it or not, Shedeur Sanders wasn't just another quarterback anymore. He was a force changing the locker room, the culture, and possibly the future of the franchise. But what happened next would make everything that night look small. If the locker room was rattled after that game, the front office was furious. Not confused, not curious, not cautious. Furious. Because this wasn't just about a bad game, a misread defense, or a stalled drive. This was about power, about control, and about a move that blindsided people who were supposed to be in the loop. For weeks, ownership and the front office had been building a long-term blueprint. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just a quarterback, he was an investment, a franchise-changing future, someone they believed could reshape not just the offense, but the organization's identity. The coaching staff, especially Stefanski, saw things differently. To them, Shedeur wasn't the future, he was a threat to the status quo. And after the Ravens game, that simmering disagreement turned into outright conflict. Inside the building, reports say meetings got heated. Some executives demanded answers. Why did he play without preparation? Why did he receive 0 first-team reps all week? Why was a rookie thrown into a hostile environment with no support and no adjustment to the playbook? Stefanski reportedly pushed back, framing it as a competitive evaluation, the same line he tried in the press conference, but the front office wasn't buying it. They had the practice logs. They had staff reports. They had witness accounts that contradicted everything he said publicly. Some within the organization compared it to watching someone intentionally loosen bolts on a race car, then acting surprised when the car crashed. What made things worse? The analytics department, who had been advocating for Shedeur's gradual development, had documented weeks of data showing play calling could be tailored to his style. Shorter reads, designed rollouts, quick timing concepts. None of that was used. Not a single adjustment. It wasn't just negligence, it looked like defiance. Meanwhile, one executive reportedly delivered a chilling line in a closed-door meeting. "If you sabotage the future of this franchise to protect your ego, then you are the problem, not the quarterback." That moment changed everything. Suddenly, Stefanski's authority, once unquestioned, was now under the microscope. People inside the building began taking sides. Scouts, Team Shedeur. Analytics, Team Shedeur. Ownership, quietly leaning toward Shedeur. Coaches loyal to Stefanski, digging in, doubling down, defending the process. And just like the locker room, the front office began to fracture. Whispers turned into closed-door conversations. Closed-door conversations turned into strategy debates. And those debates turned into something no organization wants. A silent war over who controls the future. Because this wasn't just about one decision. This was about whether the Browns would move forward with a new era built around a rising star, or cling to the system and leadership that, for the first time, no longer looked untouchable. And the next move, it wouldn't be made on the field. It would be made in boardrooms, and whatever happened next would determine whether this franchise rises or completely implodes. After that game, the Browns weren't just dealing with a quarterback controversy. They were walking straight into a franchise-level crisis. The kind of breaking point that doesn't just fade with time. The kind that rewrites reputations, reshapes roles, and forces every person in the building to pick a side. Because once you expose a divide this deep, there's no going back to normal. Reporters sensed it immediately. Questions in press conferences shifted from football strategy to organizational dysfunction. Analysts weren't talking about coverages or offensive philosophy anymore. They were talking about something far more serious. Trust. And once trust cracks inside a professional sports franchise, everything else follows. Behind closed doors, meetings intensified. Not the usual routine check-ins. These were long, tense, closed-room discussions. Executives demanding accountability. Coaches defending decisions. Ownership quietly observing personalities under pressure, taking mental notes on who was willing to adapt and who would go down fighting for control. The mood in the building shifted too. People who once worked smoothly now walked past each other without speaking. Staff who normally joked around looked tense, guarded. The environment felt colder, calculated. Every move, every conversation suddenly mattered. Because everyone understood one truth. Someone was going to lose their job over this. The only question was who. Meanwhile, outside the walls of the facility, the fan base split. Social media turned into a battleground. Some defended Stefanski, arguing Shedeur wasn't ready and criticism was premature. But far more people believed something darker had happened, something intentional. Clips of the game circulated everywhere. Analysts slowed down plays frame by frame, highlighting the lack of adjustments, the mismatched routes, the complete absence of support for Shedeur on the field. What was once a theory was now becoming a widely accepted narrative. This wasn't an accident, this was a setup. And while Stefanski continued publicly pushing the evaluation narrative, the damage was already done. Trust from players, executives, and fans had already taken a hit. Inside Shedeur's camp, things remained quiet but not passive. They were collecting information, tracking media reaction, watching the organization's response. Because they knew something. If the Browns tried to spin this situation, if they tried to bury what happened, if they failed to take accountability, they were ready to push back. Hard. And somewhere deep inside the franchise, a realization began to spread. This wasn't just about one game. This was about whether the Browns were a team with a future or a franchise trapped in old power battles and outdated thinking. The kind that burns talent instead of backing it. The crisis had begun, and every day moving forward would determine whether Cleveland rebuilt or broke completely. When the dust finally settled, after one of the most chaotic and controversial weeks in recent Browns history, one truth remained. Everyone now knows something is deeply wrong inside this franchise. Because this wasn't just a bad game. This wasn't just a miscommunication, a risky coaching decision, or a rookie quarterback having a rough debut. This was a moment that exposed the fault lines, the politics, the power struggles, the mistrust that had been building beneath the surface long before kickoff. And now, it's all out in the open. Fans feel it, players feel it, national media sees it, ownership can't ignore it. What happened to Shedeur Sanders wasn't viewed as a coaching experiment, it was seen as a test of power, a test of control, a test of who gets to shape the direction of the franchise. The coaching staff, or the people who built it, invested in it and expect results. But now everything has changed. Because once players believe a coach would rather protect his ego than give the team its best chance to win, leadership is gone. Once executives suspect someone is undermining a franchise cornerstone rather than developing him, job security becomes temporary. And once the fan base believes sabotage has replaced strategy, patience evaporates. Now the Browns stand at a crossroads, and there is no neutral ground left. They can either acknowledge what happened, accept accountability, rebuild trust, and create an environment where the most talented quarterback on the roster is developed, supported, and empowered. Or they can double down. They can deny, spin, justify, pretend this was simply football strategy gone wrong. But if they choose that route, the damage won't just linger, it will spread. Because Shedeur Sanders is not just a rookie, he's a centerpiece, a long-term investment, a player expected to become the future face of the franchise, if he feels unsupported, if he feels targeted, if he feels unwelcome. Quarterbacks today don't stay silent. They move. They demand change. And the league listens. So now the Browns organization faces the question no one, not coaches, not executives, not players, not ownership, can avoid. Was this truly a football decision, or was it sabotage? Because the answer to that question determines everything. It determines whether the Browns are a team with vision, or a fractured organization protecting egos. It determines whether Shedeur Sanders grows into a franchise quarterback in Cleveland or somewhere else. And it determines whether this moment becomes a turning point or the beginning of another era of dysfunction. The film has been watched, the reactions recorded, the consequences are coming. And until someone steps forward with honesty, transparency, and accountability, the Browns aren't just facing a quarterback controversy. They're facing an identity crisis. And the entire football world is waiting to see which side of history they choose.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.